Hi, I'm Emily.
And I'm Steve.
And I'm Barbara. We're the Wires, and we've been at Grace Point since the very beginning. So we'd like to welcome everybody this morning. Last week, Josh started a new series called Let Us Be, Embodying Our Values. And in this series, he'll be exploring questions like, how do our values align with our actions? And how do we be what we claim to believe?
We're so glad all of you are joining us. You know, Grace Point's a growing community, and we have people now not only here in Nashville, but around the United States and literally around the world. We're so glad all of you are joining us today.
If you have not yet signed up for our weekly communications emails, you can do so at gracepoint.net/subscribe, and that's Gracepoint with an E.
We'll be back in just a minute to give you a little bit more information.
Welcome to Grace Point.
We are a progressive Christian church,
loving our community by gathering in our homes.
Even as we practice social distancing,
we're asking big questions about what it means to be human,
what it means to love our neighbors,
and what it means to follow Christ.
We're cultivating a safe virtual space to deconstruct or reconstruct,
to question and to grow.
We are welcoming, affirming, and fully inclusive.
Because who you are and who you love are celebrated here.
While we may be physically apart from one another,
we believe we're never truly alone.
You are never alone.
We're together in this.
We're together in this.
So even though we can't give you a hug just yet,
we want you to know that you are beloved.
You are included.
And you are affirmed.
Welcome to Grace Point.
Welcome to Grace Point.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I don't have to earn it because I deserve it. Still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. When I didn't know, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you gave it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I don't have to earn it because I deserve it. Still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. No shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. No shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending,
Hello, Grace Point kids, and hello, Grace Point youth. I hope each of you are doing really well. As our community continues to make the wise decision to remain physically distanced, it is good for our souls to be intentional about finding ways to connect as a community. GPY, you connect every Friday at 6:30 p.m. on Discord. Discord provides you the opportunity to connect throughout the week, and this is also where your weekly reflection guides are shared. GPK, you connect every Saturday at 10 a.m. on Zoom. GPK Grown-ups, you connect on the second and fourth Thursdays at 8 p.m. on Zoom. This last week, we announced a new connection opportunity, the GPYK Minecraft server. For information about the Discord platform, Zoom Hangouts, Minecraft server, and all that is being created for and shared with the GPYK communities, check out the church calendar, Facebook groups, Instagram accounts, and our Sunday morning GPYK emails. Email me at lisa@gracepoint.net if you'd like to be included in our email list. GPK, this week we continue to utilize JL Creative's The Lord's Prayer curriculum. We discuss everyone's need for daily bread and the short-term and long-term ways that we can support our neighbors who are facing resource insecurities. You can find links to our GPK Bitmoji gathering space, as well as our principal discussion guides on Facebook, Instagram, and also in your email inbox. All right, peace out. Big air hugs and so much love to each and every one of you.
We're back. We've got just a little bit more information for you. So to begin with, we want to encourage you, if you're not joining us on Sunday mornings at 10:30, you can log on before the service, and it's where we chat, kind of say good morning to each other. It's also really interesting to see where people are coming from, literally all over the world. It's a way for us to say hi, even though we're not together.
Another way to get plugged into the community is every Wednesday at 6:30 for Reconstruct. It's always over Zoom, but we normally have great discussions. You can bring any questions that you have and we'll have a good time and hang out. Also on October 20th, we have part 1 of Books and Brews. This month we are discussing An Indigenous People's History of the United States by Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz.
So that'll be Tuesday, October 20th, and it's going to be at a new time, 8 p.m. Central. This month we'll be reading chapters 1 through 6. So good news, there's going to be another church picnic. It'll be on Sunday, October 25th from 4 to 6 p.m. and it'll be at the same place where we had it last time. That's in Sevier Park in the 12th South area of Nashville. Last but not least, the church is going to be hosting a Zoom trivia night on Thursday, October 29th. Actually, Nathaniel will be hosting it, but it's going to be lots of fun. We're going to show up with our multi-generational trivia knowledge.
And we're bringing our A game, so get ready. You heard it here first. The final opportunity is to support the community in different ways. You've heard about our announcements today and the different things we're doing online as we're all quarantined and not meeting together. Of course, there's another way to help the community, and that is by giving. We've got 2 ways you can give. You can text Grace Point at 77977, or you can go to the website, which is gracepoint.net, and that's Gracepoint with an E, and you can find an opportunity to give there. Our family has set up monthly giving, and that way we don't have to think about it, and it really allows the community a way to project and address the needs they see coming. So please consider that.
Good morning, Grace Point. It is so good to see you today. I'm so glad you're here, especially if you're joining us for the first time. Wherever you are in the world, we're so glad you're with us, and we welcome. Just hope you feel right at home. I wanted to take a few minutes to just give a couple of updates this morning. I was reminded last week when the big worship event that happened, where people got together without physical distancing, without masks, and I was just reminded of how grateful I am for this community, for the way that Grace Point, you have been so supportive and encouraging during this process as we've been meeting virtually now since mid-March. And we're just so grateful for your support and so grateful for the way you've stayed engaged. I'm grateful for the way our community has grown over this time. And so while during this current period of time, we would be meeting virtually anyway, we also are in the process of looking for new space. We just wanted to let you know, just kind of give you an update that that's something that our leadership, our LC and staff have been working on diligently. We've been touring spaces. We've been beginning the process of asking questions about getting estimates for what it would take to get us into a particular space. And so that's something that is ongoing. It's not something that's just sitting on the back burner. It's something that we've been investing our time, and it's been a part of our conversations. And we're very, very optimistic and very excited about being able to locate that space and then share that with you just as soon as possible. So it is ongoing. It's something we're working on. It's something we're giving a lot of our time and energy and attention to. And the reality is that right now our leadership agrees that we wouldn't be meeting in person anyway. Because we just don't feel like it seems like everything I see and everything we've seen, the numbers, COVID numbers are just going up, and it's troubling. But I also know at the same time, it would be wonderful for us to be able to say, when we do get to meet, this is going to be the place. And so we're working really, really hard on that, and we will keep you updated when we have something more to share. Second, today, which is October the 18th, we are beginning the process of accepting recommendations for our LC. So that window of time will be from today to the 31st of October, so a couple weeks. And if you would like to know more about that, if you're new to the process or you have questions, you can go to our website, gracepoint.net. And if you scroll down the page to the announcements, you'll find a video there from LC Chair Jason Turner, and Jason will explain not only the process, but how you can then recommend somebody to serve on the LC. So please go to our website and check that out, and then recommend some people that you think would be good leaders, people who would be good in that role for our community. So that's what's going on. That's the updates I have. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, josh@gracepoint.net. Would love to be able to answer those, and it's great to see you, Grace Point. Let's continue our gathering together this morning.
I used to think I wanted to be famous. I'd be recognized out in a crowd. But the funny thing is, anytime I've gotten what I want, it lets me down. Now I just want to look more like love. I just want to look more like love. This whole world is spinning crazy, and I can't quite keep up. It's the one thing around here that we don't have quite enough of. So I just want to look a little more like love. I used to think I needed all the answers. I used to need to know that I was right. I used to be afraid of things I couldn't cover up in black and white. Now I just want to look more like love. I just want to look more like love. This whole world is spinning crazy, and I can't quite keep up. It's the one thing around here that we don't have quite enough of. So I just want to look a little more like love. Oh, and I find the farther that I climb, there's always another line of mountaintops. Well, it's never gonna stop. And the more of anything I do, the things ends up true is getting what I want will never be enough. So I just wanna look more like love. I just wanna look more like love. 'Cause this whole world is spinning crazy and I can't quite keep up. It's the one thing around here that we don't have quite enough of. So I just wanna look a little more like love. Oh, like love.
Well, hello again, Grace Point. This morning, we're going to continue our new series, which we've called Let Us Be. And it's a series about embodying the values we share as a community. And we're going to start looking at these values individually. We're going to begin with sort of maybe the main value, the thing that everything else proceeds from, and that is love. And here's how we frame it at Grace Point. We talk about that life is a gift to be enjoyed and that love is a responsibility to be shared. If you want to put it a little more succinctly, make it a little more portable, we believe life is a gift and love is the point. But what does that mean? What does it mean to talk about love? Because we talk about love a lot, like all the time, and we even do it and talk about it in really strange ways. For example, I might talk about my kids and say, oh, I love my kids. And then like the next breath be in a conversation about food and say, oh, I love tacos. Does the word mean the same thing in both of those sentences? Does it mean that my kids are on par with tacos, or tacos are on par with my kids and they're both vying for my love and affection and attention? Another facet of the conversation about love is what does it mean in our current context, right? If we just sort of take it out of the ether what does love mean in our current context? I actually thought about the phrase that was in my head for this part of the sermon was like, what does love mean in the era of Trump? What does love mean in the era of COVID? What does love mean in a time, and I'm sure for some of us there's a resonance here. What does it mean in a time that is so fractured and divided, at a time where conflict abounds and that we're all experiencing emotional trauma and our nation's going through trauma as a country? And we're living in the middle of a worsening global pandemic. What does love look like in this particular moment? What does love look like in an election year? What does it mean in this context? So that's what I want to lean into. The conversation I want to have today is, what do we mean by love? And then what does love embodied look like in our particular context, and really any context? What does it look like to embody love? I think we first have to acknowledge that we have sentimentalized love in such a major way that the word in some ways has lost its significance, right? But because we tend to see love as something, nothing more than like a warm fuzzy or this sense of affection or even romance. And don't get me wrong, I love a good rom-com probably way more than I would ever want to admit publicly. But love's power, it definitely includes affection and it includes romance and it includes warm fuzzies. But love's power is much larger than just those particular meanings. And another problem is the word love can be used and has been used to try to get people to avoid or deflect from dealing with conflicts. When the party line is, well, we've just got to love them anyway, we can end up papering over issues that actually are going to compound and deepen the problem. I believe that loving our enemies is always the right choice. But what does that mean? I mean, it sounds good. It is good. But until we talk about what love is, what love means, then when saying we should love our enemies, saying I love my kids, saying I love tacos, saying like it just sort of it leaves us in a bit of confusion. Listen to the way some of the writers of the Bible describe love. We looked at this text last week, but it's Paul's well-known fruit of the Spirit list. And I find it really interesting that when Paul composes this list, he uses the word fruit, and often we'll put an S on it and make the assumption that it's plural. But actually, in the original Greek of the New Testament, Paul doesn't use a plural. He uses a singular. And here's what it says. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. He's not describing multiple fruits. He's describing the fruit. And it begins with love. And it's almost like love is sort of the thing through which everything else comes into being. In Romans 13, Paul goes on to say that every single commandment is summed up in the call to love our neighbor as ourselves. And then he adds this in Romans 13. Love does no harm to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfillment of the law. Love does no harm to a neighbor, which sets into sort of an interesting context. A lot of the things we've been seeing with people who are refusing to practice social distancing and physical distancing, with people who want to get together and pack in real tightly and have a worship protest, whatever that means, or have a campaign rally. And actually, we can say that that's not loving, because love does no harm. And so think about, gosh, what does that mean? What does it mean to be a loving person? What does it mean to embody love in the world? Part of it means is we're not going to do harm to the people around us. Notice the way Colossians and Ephesians have some similar texts. In Colossians 3, the writer says, therefore, as God's choice, holy and loved, put on compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Be tolerant with each other, and if someone has a complaint against you, forgive each other. As the Lord forgave you, forgive each other. And over all these things, put on love, which is the perfect bond of unity. And perfect there actually doesn't mean flawless. It's a word that means completeness. But love is what brings completeness to the bond of unity. In Ephesians 4, the writer says, put aside all bitterness, losing your temper, anger, shouting, and slander, along with every other evil. Be kind, compassionate, and forgiving to each other, in the same way God forgave you in Christ. Therefore, imitate God like dearly loved children. Live your life with love, following the example of Christ, who loved us and gave himself for us. I love that. Imitate God as dearly loved children. This is exactly what kids do, right? Kids want to put on their parents' shoes. They want to put on their parents' shirt. They want to do things that are very much, actually, our oldest went through a phase when he was younger, when he was really small, where he wanted to dress like me. And so like on Sunday morning when we went to church, every week he and I had to have some sort of the same look, some sort of matching. And he doesn't want to do that anymore, but he did at one point, because that's what kids do. They want to imitate. And the writer says, imitate God, because God has embodied love in the world. Love for these early Christian writers isn't just a theory or a concept that's sort of lost in the ether of sentimentality. For them, love wasn't even a doctrine. Love was something much more practical that could be embodied in the world. Love is sort of the impetus. It's the energy behind transformation. It's the bond that holds us together. It sums up everything we are called to do and be in the world. If the question is, what's love got to do with it? Is that how it goes? If the question is, what does love have to do with anything? I think the answer seems to be everything. Love has everything to do with everything. So practically, if this is what we're talking about with love, not just some sort of sentimentality or some sort of fuzzy feeling, but if we're talking about love as something that is embodied in the world and transforms everything, how do we embody that reality in this context? And I want to begin by talking about love, empathy, and compassion. I think in so many ways, empathy and compassion are grounded in this understanding of love. I think one of the best ways we embody love to those around us is by showing empathy and seeking to be compassionate. I totally get it. Some people make empathizing with them so difficult, right? Like they make it impossible at times. And it's actually not fair or healthy to say to someone who has been victimized or harmed by somebody else that, wow, you really should feel sorry for your abuser. That's totally toxic. Maybe part of the difficulty is that we assume empathy means somehow either ignoring or feeling sorry for or excusing the behavior of somebody else. And I want to come back to that in a minute. What would happen, though, if we saw empathy at this level, at just trying to see the humanity of another person? Or maybe even just making sure that we are acknowledging the humanity of another person. Because one of the dangers, maybe the greatest danger we face, is that we end up dehumanizing the dehumanizers. And when we end up dehumanizing the dehumanizers, we ourselves become dehumanizers, and we keep dehumanization in circulation. And part of our mission in the world is to take dehumanization out of circulation. So maybe when we talk about empathy, it's not feeling sorry for them. It's looking and seeing that they are a human being, and there may be all sorts of issues and struggles, and you may 100% have to put boundaries in place for certain people. Love doesn't mean we don't have boundaries. Actually, in my own experience, sometimes the only way love is possible is when we have boundaries that are really clear and really defined. Jesus said the greatest commandment is to love God and to love our neighbor as ourselves. And I think the church has preached, love God and love your neighbor. And that's so important. Love your neighbor is vital. But we've lost those last couple of words. Love your neighbor as ourself, as yourself. That means that we actually can't truly love a neighbor deeply and authentically unless we love ourselves first. Love, compassion, and empathy begin at home within ourselves. The best way I can embody love, the best way I can practice empathy is sometimes with some people is to make certain that I have a space that has a well, clear, maintained boundary because it keeps me healthy. There are some people that for me to acknowledge their humanity, sometimes we need space and distance, right? That's just true. If somebody's wounded you, they've hurt you, they're toxic in your life, the call is not, go be as close to them as possible. The call is not, well, you got to feel sorry for them anyway. The call may be that from a distance, you acknowledge that they're a human being and that somebody needs to come alongside them and show some empathy and compassion perhaps, but that person doesn't necessarily you. So I do think there's this reality that love plus love, when it sort of shakes out as empathy, as seeing the humanity of someone else, and as compassion, is acting compassionately when we feel compelled to, when we feel we have the opportunity to, and it's safe for us and it's not going to put us in harm's way. Then the second thing I want to say about love, I don't think we can have a conversation about love unless we have a conversation about justice. For love to actually be love in the way that our tradition talks about it, it cannot just be a warm, fuzzy sentiment. It actually has to take justice seriously. The philosopher Cornel West said, never forget that justice is what love looks like in public. Isn't that great? I love that line. Justice is what love looks like in public. In Jesus' own understanding of God, he was grounded in a call to justice. Listen to this text from Matthew 6:33. It's kind of a well-known text, but it's often, based on the way it's been translated, we miss some of the impetus that Jesus is, or some of the focus Jesus is putting on this. Matthew 6:33, instead, desire first and foremost God's kingdom and God's righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. So it's in the context of don't worry about what you'll eat, don't worry about what you'll drink, don't worry about what you'll wear. Instead, focus first and foremost on pursuing God's kingdom and God's righteousness, and everything will be given to you as well. That word righteousness has a certain connotation. It carries kind of an air of sanctimony, doesn't it? Like we often use it in the context of the word self, like self-righteous, right? Somebody who's insufferable, who thinks they're so holy and pure and good, and everybody else is somehow beneath them, right? So that word has some baggage. But here's what's interesting. In the original language in the New Testament, the word that gets translated here, righteousness, is the word dikaiosune. And essentially, it's a word that means justice. Jesus says, seek God's kingdom, which we could say maybe seek to order the world in the way of the divine, which is a way of justice. Seek God's justice. I don't know about you. I did not grow up in church being taught to seek God's justice. I was taught to seek God's righteousness, to seek God's morality. And that since I was beneath that morality, God had to go and kill his son to somehow prove to me that, or somehow accept me and love me. That's not what's going on here. What this text is, what Jesus does is Jesus doesn't situate like, well, justice is a human concern, but God's more concerned with heavenly things. Actually, what God is concerned with is how the world is ordered. God is concerned about justice. And love, embodied, will always look like people working for a more just and equitable world. And that means that love has a prophetic dimension. And I don't know what that word does to you when you hear the word prophetic, but the prophets in the Bible, prophets weren't fortune tellers. That's actually not true. They actually, what prophets would do is they would look at the world, they would look at what was going on, they would sort of take into account the justice of God, and then they would describe the world. And they would say, if you keep living in this way, if you keep living in this unjust way, things aren't going to go very well. And they were voices that called the powerful, the wealthy, the people sort of on top of the pyramid of power. The prophets were voices that called them to do justice, to share, and to practice faithfulness to God by practicing generosity to their neighbors. And the two couldn't be separated. You couldn't practice faithfulness to God and not care about the suffering of human beings around you. Right? It was just in their mind, in their understanding of God, it was impossible to think you were being faithful to God. And right, we talked about being is greater and more vital than believing last week. When believing is most important, you can believe all the right things and have all the right doctrines in place, and you can feel like you're being faithful to God. But when you aren't when you aren't like putting hands and feet into the world, doing good, caring about those who are suffering, like you're actually not being faithful to God. Faithfulness to God isn't just believing a bunch of things. Faithfulness to God is joining God in the work of restoring and repairing the world. Now, the prophets, they were not soft and cuddly. They probably came off a bit cranky at times. They definitely were not appreciated by those in power. Kings and queens typically did not enjoy the work of the prophets because they were the focus of the prophetic critique. So listen to some words from the prophet Amos, Amos chapter 5. And again, I said they're a little cranky and not soft and cuddly. Here's how it begins. Doom. Some translations say woe, W-O-E, not like W-O-A-H, but woe, doom to those who desire the day of the Lord. So the day of the Lord essentially was this day when God would set the world right. And Amos says, doom to those who would desire the day of the Lord. Why do you want the day of the Lord? It is darkness, not light, as if someone fled from a lion and was met by a bear, or sought refuge in a house, rested a hand against the wall, and was bitten by a snake. Isn't the day of the Lord darkness, not light, all darkness with no brightness in it? Now, you have to understand what Amos is saying. Amos is about to address an injustice. And what Amos is saying is that for those of you who are in power, you say you want the day of the Lord. But if God were to roll up God's sleeves and dive in, you would be in trouble. Because the very people you're oppressing are crying out to God. And God hears the cry of the oppressed. And God wills their liberation. And God will always be on their side. And God is only going to be on your side when you're on the side of the oppressed. Right? And so Amos he's not saying this is a blanket like, oh, this is just going to be bad for everyone. No, he's saying those of you who have ordered the world to your benefit, when this transformation of the world comes, it is going to feel like hell for you. Because you have ordered your existence in such a way that you have walled yourself in and everybody is on the outside, and you have taken care of yourself at the expense of your community. And this is going to be a rough day for you. And then Amos goes on speaking as if for God. I reject your festivals. I don't enjoy your joyous assemblies. Right? There's so many ties back to what's happened in the last couple of weeks. If you bring your entirely burned offering and gifts of food, I won't be pleased. Don't bring me sacrifices. I don't need your sacrifices. I won't even look at your offerings of well-fed animals. Take away the noise of your songs. I won't listen to the melody of your harps, but let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like ever-flowing streams. I mean, Amos he's cranked up and he's speaking for the divine, and essentially through Amos, the prophet believes God is saying, look, when you all get together and you sing your songs, it is like nails on a chalkboard. It's so funny how things come full circle. When I was a kid, there were certain songs that I liked that I would play that my dad just could not deal with. One of them was a song by the Counting Crows called Mr. Jones. Any Counting Crows fans? Any Mr. Jones fans? And I like the song, but I think I liked it more because it irritated Dad. And now, believe it or not, my kids, especially our oldest, will listen to certain songs, and I'm like, we're hearing that again? It's interesting how it comes full circles. And this is sort of, but this, and for the prophet, this is like nails on a chalkboard. You're getting together and you're singing these songs, but the reality you're embodying has no connection to this worship thing you're doing that really is mostly just about showing off. But instead of that, instead of getting together and what if you let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream? Listen to these words from the prophet Isaiah. Isaiah in Isaiah 58 says, shout loudly, don't hold back, raise your voice like a trumpet. And so this is the prophet speaking for God, which they did. Announce to my people their crime, and to the house of Jacob their sins. They seek me day after day, desiring knowledge of my ways like a nation that acted righteously, justly, right? Because righteousness, even in Hebrew, has the connotation of justice. So not doctrinal purity, but actual justice being brought to the world. They seek me day after day, desiring knowledge of my ways like a nation that acted righteously, that didn't abandon their God. They ask me for righteous judgments, for just judgments, wanting to be close to God. Why do we fast and you don't see? Why afflict ourselves and you don't notice? Yet on your fast day, you do whatever you want. You oppress all your workers. You quarrel and brawl. And when you fast, you hit each other violently with your fists. You shouldn't fast as you are doing today if you want to make your voice heard on high. Is this the kind of fast I have chosen? A day of self-affliction, of bending one's head like a reed, of lying down in mourning clothing and ashes? Is this what you call a fast, a day acceptable to the Lord? Isn't this the fast that I choose? Releasing wicked restraints, untying the ropes of a yoke, setting free the mistreated and breaking every yoke. Isn't it sharing your bread with the hungry and bringing the homeless poor into your house, covering the naked when you see them and not hiding from your own family? Then your light will break out like the dawn and you will be healed quickly. Your righteousness will walk before you. Your justice will walk before you and the Lord's glory will be your rear guard. Then you will call and the Lord will answer. You will cry for help and God will say, I'm here. Which I would love to have heard Brian Gilliland do the I'm here there, because that's his signature line, if you saw the videos from a few weeks ago. And this prophet's cranked up. The prophet says, is this what you think God's after? A production? You think this is what God's after? You're being able to say, gosh, we did this. Aren't we righteous? Aren't we holy? And it's interesting that through the prophets, the message keeps being, if you have to choose between worship and justice, choose justice. If you have to choose between a religious production and actually bringing about a more just world, a more equitable world, focus your energy on that. Now, I think you can do both, right? But the danger is becoming a religious institution that focuses on how we do this thing really well when we aren't focused on the actual needs and the actual need for justice around us. Right? This isn't a warm fuzzy, but it is love being enacted in a call for justice. This is why I made a decision that for me as a faith leader, as a person who has a certain responsibility, that what I say has like people listen, like in a sermon like this, you're listening to what I say. And so one of the things I remember being taught very early on in my ministry is that it's from the book of James that teachers, their words will be judged more strictly, right? More harshly. So be careful how you use your words. And one of the things I've decided is that as a person, as a faith leader who knows that my words carry a weight and significance, I can no longer sit back and stay quiet when injustice is present. I've been told by folks over the last few years, essentially some version of shut up and preach, right? That politics and religion shouldn't be mixed. The problem is that politics, what politics is about, what they're about, is the way we order the world, the way we order our shared common life. That's what politics are about. Right? Politics are about how do we take care of the most vulnerable among us. Politics are about how do we make sure that as a country we're being just in our laws and the enforcement of those laws. All right, how do we make sure as a country that we are stewarding the massive amount of resources that we've been entrusted with well? And so in that sense, everything ends up having a political implication because it affects our common life. It affects how the world is ordered. There aren't these religious spheres and then economic spheres and then political spheres. What they understood in the ancient world is that actually everything is integrated and that it is impossible to disentangle all these different areas from life and compartmentalize them. This belief that religion should focus on telling Bible stories and preparing people for the afterlife to leave this world for another one is a modern invention and a foreign concept for the prophets, including Jesus. And so I've come to this understanding that to be a Christian is to understand that this world is actually our home, and the transformation of this world into a more just and generous home for everybody, regardless of whether or not they share our label, regardless of regardless, our work is to transform this world, to participate in the transformation of this world into a more just and generous place for all human beings. That's our work. Love in public always looks like justice. And the fact that we need justice in our world means that injustice is present. And that fact that there's injustice present means that love isn't being embodied in the world in the way we've been invited to embody it. I love these words from Martin Luther King, Jr. There comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular. But he or she must take it because conscience tells them it is right. Think about those words. That there are going to be times when we must take positions that will be neither safe, nor politic, nor popular. But because deep down we know that the world, that there is injustice in the world, and that what love embodied looks like is justice for every human being. Perhaps when we think about embodying, if we think about being this value of love, it looks like love leads to empathy, to seeing the humanity of someone, to compassion, to caring about their suffering, and then to justice, to putting hands and feet and actual flesh and blood on whatever the need, whatever the idea, whatever's happening in the world. It's actually beginning to embody it in flesh and blood and to bring about the transformation of this world.
No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace!
This is the color of the day. I am tired of seeing from a sheltered place. Who am I to speak? I've never known your song, so I'll turn the other cheek. The world is aflame. The makers and the martyrs burn to gray. Your words are ablaze. Signs being struck by bullets raised to say, I cannot breathe. These are the words I can say. Use my voice if you wish, but I've never known my place. Hands up, do not shoot. No justice, no peace, no luxury, no loot. The world is aflame. The victims and the bullies burn to gray. My words are ablaze. Signs being struck by bullets raised to say,
again. We will march again. We will preach again. We will organize again. We are black. We are white. We are Latino. We are Native American. We are Democrat. We are Republican. We are independent. We are people of faith. We are people not of faith. We are natives and immigrants. We are business leaders and workers and unemployed. We are doctors and the uninsured. We are gay. We are straight. We are students. We are parents. We are retirees. We are America. And we're here. And we ain't going nowhere.
Thank you so much for being here again, Grace Point. It's been a joy to be together. It's been a joy to explore our values together. And I want to just say a quick thanks to our friends at Hudos, Jamal and Moksha. They've been friends of mine for, 15 or more years now, and they're incredible artists. And this new song and video they produced, which all the proceeds are going to the Poor People's Campaign. Of course, you heard Dr. Barber in that video, and it's just a beautiful, it's prophetic, a prophetic sort of thing that they've got going, and I'm just so glad that they could be a part of our gathering. So you can look them up on iTunes and Spotify. They have stuff everywhere if you'd like to support their work. So thanks so much for being here, Grace Point. Looking forward next week. We'll jump in again and we'll explore what does it mean to take these things that we call values and seek to be them and embody them in the world. Hope you have a great week. We love you. Grace and peace be with you.
you.